Set up.
And the timer just ran out, and that was the first words spoken on this stream.
Yes. Everyone, thanks to Steven here, who's in the Discord audience, as we get everything set up here. We just set up in a Discord room here on the English Hub, and instead of doing a bunch of themed call-in shows tonight, we're just going to have a watch party and watch some videos, and have some fun existential crises.
And I got the
I
party
think this one's
lights.
talking about meaning. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And so we're just taking it easy tonight. But if it's something that interests you, come join in, chat with us. We'll be watching, pausing, and drinking and thinking.
Drinking and thinking.
That's what we should have called it.
Yeah. Shoulda. All right, should we get into this this first one?
Yeah. This is a video called "Meaning as a Jumper That You Have to Knit Yourself." It's by a depression turtle.
This is Viktor Frankl. He was a neurologist and a psychiatrist. He lived through the concentration camps of the Second World War. He survived starvation, slave labor, watched countless people die. You know what the concentration camps were. We won't dwell on it. Anyway, during that time, he had a revelation, which was this. Humans are an animal driven by purpose. Above all, we strive for a sense of meaning in our lives, and if we don't get it, we get extremely, extremely sad. And by the time I finished ranting at you today, I hope you will agree with this too. For the longest time, a good day for a human consisted of finding food, finding water, and not getting fucking eaten. And even though...
What was that, David?
I lost it. I lost the sound.
Oh. Can nobody in Discord hear the sound? Are you frozen? You're frozen in
technical
Discord.
Difficulties.
Okay. Hey, Steven, can you hear the video when it plays? Let us know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what question mark exclamation point means, Steven. You're going to have to use a few more words there.
Yeah. All right, well, let's just keep rolling.
Okay. You can't hear it, though?
I can hear it now. I hear things now.
hunter-gatherers probably have more free time than we.
You're good? Okay.
Yeah. We're
You
good.
do. Chances are the focus of their lives was to stay alive. Next, we developed civilization, and along came organized religion. I'm not shitting on religion here, believe whatever you like, but whether the notorious God does exist or not, it arguably gave humans a purpose in the universe. We were special, we were loved, sometimes, and we actually meant something in the grand scheme of things. Lately though, things are getting a bit complicated. If you're listening to this, there's a very strong chance you will never live through a war directly, you will never experience prolonged starvation, or have to worry about getting access to clean drinking water. I say this not to guilt you, but just to point out how much has changed for lots of us. However, whereas before, the purpose of one's life was focused around not getting dead, or remembering to worship the god of your choice, today, lots of us have more time to think about life, and we still don't have an agreed sense of what we're doing here. There is a shadow in the background of modern life. It is best described as having enough food, hopefully having enough money to live on, not needing to worry about lions, and still being sure that some vital thing is missing. And that missing thing, Viktor Frankl argued, is meaning. Frankl noticed that lots of his patients had this sensation of total meaninglessness in their lives. He called this the existential vacuum. When I got my cat, I asked the vet, "What do cats need, please?" And she said, "Food, water, and fuss." I give her these things, and she seems, as far as I can tell, pretty cool with the whole arrangement. At no point has she demanded to know the purpose of her existence or the correct interpretation of quantum mechanics. It doesn't seem that easy to satisfy humans though, because we are very, very clever animals. And oh look, it's past pop psychology o'clock. Maybe you know about...
Is that something that differentiates humans from animals? It would be like the ability to want to have this knowledge, desire for
maybe
knowledge?
When you're not thinking about the meaning of things, you're less human, and the more you think about the meaning of things, you're more human. And to be human is Don't know yet. Keep watching.
All right.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's not accepted by everyone, but it's a pretty good rough guide. So we're fairly sure humans need basic stuff first. Food, water, sleep, etika, then security and safety and no getting nommed by lions, yes, then belonging and love, as in family, intimate relations, then self-esteem, to be respected, to be appreciated, and then finally, self-actualization, or becoming that thing one actually wants to be. Lots of humans, it seems, are somewhere between here and here. Hopefully, lots of us are living in relative safety, and that's grand, but the general message of 21st century life, for being self-actualized, at least in some parts of the world, is make a demonies or buy lots of property or something, and then you'll miraculously be happy and fulfilled. Well, nothing wrong with money or houses, but it seems pretty evidential that is not enough for purpose and happiness in itself. A few recent studies hinted that having money does actually make you happier. Unless you win the lottery, interestingly, then you're probably fucked, linked below. But there does seem to be a limit. A Princeton study a while ago suggested that above about $75,000, happiness and well-being doesn't increase that much. Above a certain threshold of being able to support yourself and your family, most humans don't get too much happier above that with money alone. So something else is required for happiness. Happiness is one of the few things humans try to achieve for its own sake. But there's a problem with happiness, which is that most of us seem to behave thinking, well, when I've bought, finished, driven, built, completed X, I'll just be happy forever, and nothing will ever hurt again. If you've ever tried being human, you may have noticed that this is not how happiness works. Ever. Usually, over a long enough period of time, humans revert back to their baseline hedonic set point, their default happiness position. This is called the hedonic treadmill, and it's a fundamental shit part of the human condition. But what's interesting is that there doesn't seem to be a meaning treadmill in the same way. For example, one of the most significant life events for lots of humans will be having more humans, eventually. And parenting itself seems to start off feeling pretty cool, but gets a bit fucking stressful for about 20 years. And in those 20 years, even though the euphoria dies off, and many parents at times wish to eat their young, the feeling of purpose does not die off. This also appears to apply to long-term relationships that work and professions people genuinely enjoy. There may be difficult weeks or months, but overall, if it's in line with what an individual actually wants, inherently, then the thing continues to be meaningful for a long time, possibly even for life. Meaning seems like a far more sustainable goal than happiness. And according to what we know so far, if you have the first, the second often follows, even in hard times. Years ago, I had a shit temp job in an office, and I spent the entire time being incompetent and fantasizing about getting out. And my boss, who was a nice lady, seemed genuinely happy filling in spreadsheets and playing solitaire when the big boss wasn't looking. And she was very clever, so one day I asked her why she liked working there. And she said that when she was little, she used to dream about working in an office and having a desk and going to the coffee machine, blah blah, and now she was living the dream.
Why? Why would you dream about working in an office?
I mean, maybe they lived in a real crowded house. Maybe they lived on a farm. Maybe they really, really, really liked the British sitcom The Office.
And they
or the new Australian remake. Yeah. They wanted to be Jim or Pam or Stanley.
Such an odd choice, but I mean, all right. Anyways, I just wanted to comment on that.
Dream, and I realized at that moment just how different humans' motivations can be. If working there was in line with what she wanted to do, and she was happy doing it, which she was, then who the hell was I to tell her otherwise? Unfortunately, humans are not cats, and food and water and fuss just ain't gonna cut it. Most of us seem to want to be trying at something we enjoy, but the spectrum of human enjoyment is so vast it's ridiculous, so there's not gonna be some magical human science that says, alright you fucks, everyone eat 5 cream eggs a day, learn the accordion, get a job as a telephone sanitizer, and then you'll find purpose in life. It's something a lot more complicated than that. And Viktor Frankl's position was that finding an individual sense of meaning is a journey the individual has to undertake alone. Sometimes you come across people who are much older than you, but are still self-centered or compulsive liars or whatever. And it's worrying because you assumed if you just live long enough, you'll work shit out and stuff will be fine. And here's someone who lived a long time and somehow is still an awful person. One day I was talking to a Buddhist nun about this, and she said, well, obviously, you have to try at being wise or you'll spend your whole life never growing. Meaning is a jumper that you have to knit yourself. That seemed quite clever and quite true. Oh, a jumper is a sweater, to those of you living in certain breakaway British territories, what? Where we are now might be part of a huge experiment in human history, which is give some people miraculous technology, give them education and Mars bars and VR, and see if that provides them with a purpose in life. For some of them, lots of them, it doesn't seem to. The question then is, yeah, thanks for the technology and the education and everything, but life still feels empty on some level for some of us. And what the hell do we do now, please? Every age has its trials. The existential vacuum might be ours. If you take away the constant threat of death, purpose is given back to the individual. And that's bad, and that's good. If one actually pursues some individual sense of meaning, whether it be in love, or work, or whatever, that's grand. If not, an entire lifetime can be spent, and many have been spent, doing nothing about it. The game of life begins with you appearing on the outskirts of this huge, dark forest. You ask a few people what we're all doing here, but no one, including your parents or teachers, really has a clue. Now you're told that inside the forest is real life, and if you go in, you'll have to do battle with all sorts of monsters, like loneliness, everything feeling futile, shit jobs, people being vindictive, your own limitations, not knowing what you inherently want, worrying about income, worrying about disease, the death of people close to you, universal human stuff, right? But facing up to it, actually saying, fuck you, I'm gonna learn or make or become whatever it is, or just refuse to die on the inside, despite living in a universe that is clearly not kind, and where suffering is inevitable, that might be the only way of achieving some sense of individual meaning. What's that Ray Bradbury line? Ask no guarantees, ask for no security. There never was such an animal. And if there were, it would be related to the great sloth, which hangs upside down in a tree all day, every day, sleeping its life away. Just being alive in the first place is fucking ridiculous, and it's amazing that most of us are even keeping it together at all. It's one thing to get called into creation without being asked first. It's an insult to injury to then be expected on top of that to work out what the hell you're doing here in the first place. And I think there's a pretty good chance that Viktor Frankl and a bunch of others have already shown us how to beat that problem. Purpose seems to be personal. It comes from the inside, from a sense of enjoying one's work, from living around people one actually loves, from striving to know, even if only in a small human way, for a short human time, what we're even doing here in the first place, individually. If not that, then what the hell was the point in being here? And if that feels like a challenge, well, that's to be expected, because everyone else is playing the same game, whether they admit it or not, however much older, however much more powerful they might be. What is it with these pricks one meets at parties sometimes who claims they've got it all worked out? Are you serious? Have you even noticed where you are? You'll find...
Do you have something?
No, I was saying that was me.
Oh,
that
was you.
The prick who talks to you at parties about existentialism. No. Sorry.
We're just being called into creation, are you? You're alright with just popping down the shop for an ice cream and pretending anything makes sense. Are you fucking kidding me? Oh yeah, welcome to existence. Everything's confusing, the universe is actively hostile, and you don't even know what the conditions for your own happiness are. Oh, by the way, you're sentient meat standing on a living spaceship. Best of luck coming to terms with that one. Yeah, like getting very confused about all this isn't entirely natural for literally everyone. Like we have anything more here than just each other. No one knows what they're doing. Everybody shits, and really, no one knows what they're doing. And that's alright. That's to be expected. Knit your own meaning jumper if you can. Lots of other humans did, and it seemed to work out for them. Cool. Rant over. Good luck with your fucking lives then. Oh, what's that? It's The Prince of Milk, that book I wrote ages ago out as a paperback. You can get it on Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think he's spot on. I think that makes sense.
If you could sum it up for me in 2 sentences, what would you say?
Follow your desires. Be curious.
Be curious. Man. Sounds simple.
It does.
Maybe a little too simple.
Maybe I oversimplified it. Maybe
so. That's the thing. It's like I like watching videos like this sometimes because it kind of sometimes I feel like you get answers that aren't the answer, but they're like in the same type of vibe of the answer. It's like you're finding things that are inspirational to get you kind of closer to what you're looking for. And so it's like I watch this and it's like, okay, it's way more complicated than this. But finding little axioms and finding little paradigms, like just framings of ways of looking at things can propel me forward in a lot of ways. Because I mean, it's like that doesn't answer a million things. Like I watched that video, it doesn't tell me what job I should do. It doesn't tell me who I am or all that. But it does kind of give you a little bit of tools to like. It's like a jumping point. So I like these videos, like, even if they're oversimplified, and that's why I think that's why we have like enjoyment out of motivational posters and daily devotionals, daily quotes and stuff like that. Is because I think that people don't necessarily take the actual quote or take the actual lesson or story specifically, but they take that
take the message and apply it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like they see something I'm overcoming, and they try to push that energy towards other things. It doesn't actually solve your problems, but kind of gives you a momentum or a framing, I guess.
Yeah. Sure.
For those you have just joined, we are doing some watch parties of some fun videos. The last one was called a meaning that you must. Meaning as a jumper, you must knit yourself. It was pretty neat. By Exterbia. And Pierce, do you have another one queued up? Maybe we can check out another one here.
Let's move on to the next one. And if
you
anybody
want to come up and
feel free to come up and say some words about whatever, really.
Yeah, and come talk about the video. Come talk about your dog. I don't care. We're just in a relaxed mode tonight. We both have busy days, and this is what I'd be doing if I wasn't on stage, is I'd be watching videos on YouTube. And so why not do it socially? Let's give it a shot.
Let's do it.
This video is sponsored by Fabulous. The first 500 people to use the link in the description will receive 25% off a premium subscription. It started as a normal night. A young woman named Claire was out with a couple friends and her boyfriend in Austin, Texas. The group had a few drinks at one of their apartments in downtown and then went out to a couple of bars in the area. From here, however, things would suddenly and severely turn bad. The next thing Claire knew, she was opening her eyes to stark lighting that overwhelmed and blinded her. It was almost as if she was being born and seeing light for the first time. As her vision returned, she noticed her surroundings. A sterile, mostly empty white room. She was in a bed. Her head was pounding. There was a woman in the corner of the room, but Claire didn't recognize her. In a delirious confusion, she leaned her head up and looked around. "Claire!" the woman in the corner shouted as she noticed. The woman rushed to the door of the room and gestured outside of it. Almost immediately, a doctor rushed in and began assisting Claire, checking her airways, adjusting various medical equipment, and administering medications. After some time passed, the doctor asked Claire how she was feeling and what she remembered. Claire paused for a moment. I don't know. Why?" she said. "You've been in a coma for several days. You hit your head. Don't worry though, everything will be okay. Just try to relax. Things should start coming back to you more and more, and we'll be here to help you and explain everything." The doctor paused. "I'm going to let you be with your mother for a little while." The woman who was in the corner of the room approached Claire's bed. "How are you feeling, sweetie?" she asked. I don't know. Weird, I think," Claire responded. Claire's mother went on to describe what happened. She told Claire that she was at a bar with two friends named Shannon and Mary and her boyfriend Chris when someone tried to fight Mary, but Claire stepped in and tried to protect her. In the process, Claire got hit in the head, knocking her unconscious and causing her to fall and hit her head on the ground. The smack against the ground severely injured her brain, and she was rushed to the hospital, where she had remained in a coma for the following 6 days. Claire didn't remember any of it. She had no idea what happened, but far, far scarier, she couldn't remember anything at all. She didn't recognize her mom. She didn't remember anyone her mom mentioned. She didn't remember having a boyfriend. She couldn't really remember anything from before waking up just moments ago. She had no idea who she was. It was like she had been reborn, but with an ability to think and understand language and concepts. It was an experience that if she had a stronger reference point for how she felt before and knew what she had now lost, it would have psychologically broken her. Claire spent the following couple days resting and going through assessments, treatments, and therapies. After several days had gone by and Claire's memory hadn't returned at all, the doctor eventually concluded that Claire had developed what is known as retroactive amnesia, far worse than he had originally expected. He explained to Claire and her mother that this particular condition was known to affect episodic, autobiographical, and declarative memory, which were essentially responsible for remembering events, people, contextual frameworks, and essentially who someone was and what their life was like. However, it often doesn't affect the individual's procedural memory, which involved things like skills and language comprehension. And so, Claire wouldn't have a difficult time learning new information moving forward, but she would essentially have to relearn everything about her life, about herself. After receiving the news, Claire sat quietly in the hospital room with her mother. Her mother cried for a while. Claire felt very little, struggling to understand the emotions of the situation. Eventually, after some more time passed, Claire looked over to her mother and said, "Can I ask a question?" "Sure, of course, honey. What do you need?" "Who am I? Like, what am I like?" Her mother stood up and walked over toward the bed. "Okay, sure, that's an easy one. You're quiet, always been a little on the shy side, closed off a bit, but you know exactly what you like and want. You always love spending time with your friends and going out and doing things. You like extravagant, big things, especially. Big events and luxurious experiences. You're sweet and you would never hurt or bother or annoy or upset anyone. You don't like to waste time or involve yourself in useless or dumb things, like a fight, for example. Obviously, you got caught up in the middle of something, but you stood up for your friend, so that says a lot about who you are." Claire laid her head back and looked straight up, as if trying to remember or perhaps absorb her mother's words. Vague threads of memory seemed to appear in her consciousness, but what were attached on the other sides remained hung down into the shadows of her mind. Later that day, Claire's sister Sammy came in to visit her. After talking for a little while, Sammy said, "If I know you at all, you definitely started that fight." Sammy laughed a bit, then continued, "You've always been a shit stirrer, you know that? Always ready to fight." The next day, Claire's boy...
Okay, I've got a theory. I don't even know if this is a true story, but here's my theory. The mom is, of course, going to tell her, like, what she wants her to be like, right? Like, not necessarily the truth. I mean, in some sense, maybe she's trying to tell the truth, but she's not going to paint that picture in any kind of negative way. No parent would, right? You're not going to go up to your child and say, "Well, you're kind of a shit stirrer," right? That's never going to happen. I mean, could it be perception as well? Sure. Because there's also this, like, social family element. So there's that.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I think, we're so many different people to the people we're around. Like, who I am to my parents, who I am to my wife, who I am to my friends, who I am to my coworkers, who I am to the post office people, who I am to the guy at Chuck E. Cheese who is watching kids throw up. I don't know. It's completely different. It's and so, like, if
true.
I were to ask any of these people who I am, they probably only give a fraction of an answer. I mean, they have 1/100th or 1/1000th of who I am as a person. And so when they're reacting to me and when they're trying to recall who I am, they're not recalling everything that I'm thinking, everything that I've done to everybody, everything that exists about me. They're only recalling a small segment of that interaction they've had with me.
It is true.
It's kind of crazy. This video is, like, creeping me out. Like, just the thought, like how could I rebuild myself if I lost my memory? Like, what will people remember about me? And
would you
there's
want
that Black
them?
Mirror.
Would you want them
Go
to
ahead.
tell you who you are, or would you want to discover who you are yourself?
I think I could get away with it saying, "Who was I?" And then I could take, reins and be like, "All right, so that's who I was, apparently. And now I get to be, the greatest dubstep beatboxer of the world." I just
Hell yeah.
reinvent myself.
All right, let's continue on.
Boyfriend Chris came in to visit, giving her mother some much-needed time to go home and rest without worrying as much. Chris sat at the edge of the hospital bed, holding Claire's hand. They talked for a little while, though they had a difficult time finding exactly what to talk about. In the midst of a silence, Claire looked at Chris and said, "Can you tell me who I am and what I'm like?" Chris paused for a moment, clearly overwhelmed. "Well, firstly, you're incredibly beautiful and sweet. More generally, you like your alone time. You prefer the simple things in life, like to just spend time by yourself or a night in. You love pasta and wine. You're a bit impulsive and often kind of like to throw caution to the wind when making decisions." He paused for a moment, carefully thinking to himself. Then he unintentionally gestured a sort of why not look. "You're also kind of defensive, kind of feisty, which I personally love about you. You always say how you feel, but you also kind of like starting things sometimes, like to see what reactions you can get out of people and situations. Sometimes you go out over your head, like the fight. Sometimes you start things with people and it's an innocent thing initially, but it can get carried away." There was a brief silence. "I started the fight?" Claire said. "Yeah, did your mom not tell you what happened?" "No, she did, but just differently, I think. I mean, I saw the whole thing. You and Mary went up to these two girls at the bar because you guys thought they looked at you weird, even though they didn't. One of them just kind of looked at you guys casually, but like you were just in front of them. And then you egged them on, and when they finally pushed back, you guys pushed back further, and then you all started fighting." Claire suddenly laid her head back, confused and disoriented. "But you're an incredible person, Claire, and an incredible girlfriend, and I love you more than anything." 2 days later, Claire's friend Mary came in and visited her. The two sat in the room alone while Mary reminisced over things from their past. After a little while, Claire asked her, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure, yeah," Mary said. "Can you describe what I'm like? Who am I?" Immediately, Mary answered, "You're tough as hell, outgoing, adventurous, confident, not willing to take anyone's shit. You're my girl, been best friends ever since high school. Always down to drink and go out and have a good time. Down for anything, honestly." Mary laughed. "You're easygoing, love to take risks and try new things. Super fun, and you're an incredible friend. You stood up for me when those girls tried to fight me, so there's that." Hesitantly, Claire said back, "So someone tried to fight you?" "Yeah, this girl wanted to fight me over like nothing, and you tried to stop the whole thing, but they just kept escalating it. But you had my back the whole time." Later that same day, Shannon, Claire's other friend who was there that night, came to visit. Again, at some point, Claire asked Shannon, "Can you tell me what I'm like and what happened?" "Sure, yeah. Well, firstly, you're incredibly kind and smart. I met you in a personal finance course in college, and I feel like I knew exactly who you were as soon as I met you. Pragmatic, calculated, careful. You don't just do things haphazardly. You're thoughtful about risks and what you spend your time doing and who you spend your time with. You can kind of be closed off into yourself a bit. Don't like doing crazy things or going crazy places, which is just like how I am. You don't like causing drama or being involved in anything stupid. You were just caught in the middle of a misunderstanding. I saw the whole thing. I was standing with Chris while you and Mary went to get a drink, and these two girls, I think, thought you guys were someone else, and you guys just asked them what they wanted, but they, prodded back at you for some reason, and then it all just erupted, and you were just there in between it all, trying to stop it." Soon, Shannon left, leaving Claire alone in the hospital room for a while. Claire sat in silence, thinking to herself, trying to piece everything together. It had been a little over a week since she had awoken from her coma, unaware of who she was and what happened. Now, after she had talked with 5 of the people supposedly closest to her, asking each of them who she was and what had happened and why, somehow, she still didn't have any idea. Each person described her almost completely differently, often in complete contradiction with each other. But each person had good reasons, examples, and an obvious sense of certainty with what they said. Claire wondered to herself how she could be all of those things they described if they contradicted each other. What was actually true, she wondered to herself. Was it all true? Was none of it? What is true? Who was she? This video was sponsored by Fabulous. It's fascinating that most of us could easily describe a few simple things that we could do each day that would almost certainly improve our lives. Eating better, sleeping. The self-care app, Fabulously Simple, Fabulous works like a digital code of goals and habits they want, which uses their behavior along the way. Start building toward your ideal daily routine today.
I thought it was in the middle. I thought there was more to it. I wanted an ending.
Yeah, I did too.
I wanted an ending.
Yeah. What do we have to do? He's supposed to give us the answer. Who was she?
Yeah, who was she? Is there really nothing at the end here? No, there's nothing.
Wow.
That was disappointing.
Yeah.
It was very disappointing.
Yeah. Wow. That guy does some really good videos, typically. I think I was the wrong one up on the list.
I think we already know the answer, though. The answer is like different people will perceive us differently, for one. And then also we interact with people in different ways. So their perception is going to be different because of that also.
Mm-hmm. You remember back in the MySpace and early Facebook days when everybody was filling out these surveys of like trying to answer questions about what they like, don't like, and then they'd ask other people's like, what do you see me as? Or like, what do you think my favorite this? Like, people have this strong desire to be validated, to be seen as they hope to be seen, me included. I can't tell how many times I've stared at Facebook trying to think of a way that ask people, so how do I come across? Like, what's your impression? Without sounding like I'm asking what their impression of me is, because that's a sure sign of not having it all together. So, there's that episode of Black Mirror. I don't know if you've seen it, at which, spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen it also, the technology exists where you can recreate a human being based on their social media profile. They basically have you send in a bunch of pictures and there's any kind of text you have from them and social media, and they build a robot that's supposed to be like as close as a real person as possible. And the story goes like, it's incredible at first because like her boyfriend or her husband died, and this is like feeling they get more time with them, but after a while they're like so incomplete because only portions of them exist that are recorded in that regard. And my dog just really does not like that episode, and I have to go calm him down. Excuse me. All right. Am I still here? Can we hear things? Is somebody muted? Pierce, you muted something.
I've been muted that whole time that I was trying to entertain people. And nobody said nothing. Nobody said nothing. Nobody said nothing. And what are these people doing here in the Discord? That they're like just
chilling,
watching me,
just chilling, having a good time,
watching me talk and not saying anything. What is going
entertaining?
on?
You know, people pay money to see mimes all the time. Maybe they're lip readers and they just didn't even think about it.
Maybe.
And if you look at your comment section on your video,
it does say muted. Something. Yeah, but he was like, he's on a delay. That was a serious delay. Like, he didn't comment that until
me?
like you got back.
Oh.
No, Taylor.
Evening, gents.
Hello, Nitty.
Good evening.
That was something to watch.
Yeah.
I liked it. It's not something, it's not a concept I've engaged much in my recent history of thinking about that kind of stuff, but I liked it.
Nitty, who do you think you would be if you had to piece together who you are from the people around you and maybe the internet?
You want my narcissistic opinion of who I think I am?
Not who you think you are, who you think other people think you are.
Oh. Well, I guess my guess is that if you looked at me through YouTube, you would say that I'm highly opinionated, passionate about certain topics, that I deeply care about my family, and some people in the atheist sphere of YouTube. You might get the sense that I don't have a lot of relationships outside of being online. Some people might think that I'm really queer, actually. That I'm not exactly straight, if not just straight up queer or something, which is fine. I don't care. They would know that I really like Marvel, that I like fantasy and world building.
Does anything you said so far feel different than how you feel about yourself?
The queer thing, I'm definitely not very queer. I have opinions, but they're probably not as strong as I might come off. People might think that I am bolder, try to be bolder and more courageous than I actually am. I'm usually a lot softer in person than I might come off on YouTube. Yeah, I'm confrontational online, which people might perceive me as, but my real life, I try to avoid it. Right opinions.
Some people consider a keyboard body armor. It's
rawr. Even the YouTube itself. I mean, I definitely try to put on a show. You might get the sense that I really hate certain kinds of people when I don't mean to seem that way. Sometimes. Maybe my frustration might come off as hate, but it's really not inside.
Are you going to do anything to remedy any of these contradictions? Or whatever
I've actually been trying to curb the difference between name calling and saying that an idea might be dumb or mistaken. Trying to. I like to say that I don't make fun of someone unless they kind of earn it. But
well, I've earned all the make fun of out there. If anybody wants to, you can have it. Make fun of me as much as you want. I need it, like energy. And
you might get the sense through YouTube.
Go ahead.
If you don't catch me saying that I'm a parent, if you just kind of if you don't view as much of my content through all the way throughout, you might think that I'm just like a forever kid because of like my backgrounds and my attitude and my boisterousness, but I'm really a parent and I try to be serious and work a job. So
I was talking today to another parent, and I was thinking about how pretty much everything from my childhood I could recreate at this stage. Like, I could go back and play video games I used to like. I could watch TV shows that I used to watch when I was a kid. I could technically go have friends together. Like, I could get some friends together and play or whatever. Technically, you know. But the thing that I don't get the most right now in my stage of life, because I have 2 kids, is I can't sleep in, like, ever. That's what I miss about being a kid the most. That's
yeah.
My youth is fighting me there. But yeah, what you're saying, a lot of things you were saying there has kind of led me to think that we should pick our next video. How the Overton window has the Overton window shifted left or right, Pierce? Why don't you cue it up there?
Do it.
Oh boy.
You want to stay on stage, Nitty?
Of course.
All right.
Do you have anyone else that's poking?
No.
The Overton window represents the range of acceptable discourse within any given society. Ideas within the Overton window are given the privilege of being seen as reasonable and clean, while ideas outside the Overton window are shunned as unreasonable or unfeasible. People apply the Overton window to both individual issues and sets of beliefs. For example, when applied to tax, you can say that slightly more tax and slightly less tax are both within the Overton window. Saying that there should be no change to tax would be in the dead center of that Overton window, while having much more tax or much less tax would both be outside the Overton window on this issue. Most people don't use the Overton window when talking about individual ideas. They instead choose to use the Overton window to refer to whole sets of ideas. Now, the easiest way to categorize sets of ideas is through political frameworks like ideas. To illustrate this, here's a political line. The best and only way to illustrate political ideologies on a spectrum. The Overton window normally rests here in the center of that political line. Every ideology within the political line is a part of the privileged centrist class. If you're in the West, everything in this box is going to be some form of liberalism, whether that's social democracy on the moderate left or neoconservatism on the moderate right. One of the most important questions we can ask about the Overton window is how it's shifted over the years. What ideas were taboo 50 years ago but are now openly being discussed, and vice versa, what ideas are taboo now that weren't 50 years ago. How have the last 5 years, for example, shifted the Overton window? The last 5 years were pretty interesting. How have the last 5 months shifted the Overton window? The answer to that question is, it kind of depends on who you ask. If you ask a leftist how the Overton window is shifted, most of them will probably say that the Overton window has shifted to the right. They'll cite a rise in right-wing populism in Europe and across the West as an example of this. They would point to right-wing ousting of center-right ideals to more of a paleo-conservative, more nationalistic sort of ideology that's more mainstream now. Some leftists argue that this rise of right-wing populism leads to ideas like fascism now being circulated seriously. However, at the same time, many right-wingers argue that the Overton window has shifted to the left in recent times, but it's also been shifting to the left over the last 50 years or so. A right-winger might observe that progressivism is the child of liberalism, and so if it's not the status quo now, it's at least its heir. They point to conservative ideas being pushed to the fringe of the Overton window, while ideas like cultural and economic Marxism proliferate in academia and media. After all, as Marx said, Cthulhu may swim slowly, but he always swims left. So what's going on here? The left says that the Overton window is shifting to the right, and the right says that the Overton window is shifting to the left. Could one of them be wrong? Impossible, because there is literally no difference between the left and the right. In terms of how base they are, we must assume that both of these viewpoints are exactly correct. But how can the Overton window have shifted both to the left and to the right? Well, we're going to have to do some science to explain that. Some political science. Hold on, I have a PhD. You have to have a very high IQ to understand drag. Now listen, I know a lot of you simpletons can't possibly understand this, but what you have to keep in mind is that the Overton window has a constant surface area that can never be broken. According to my exact, precise scientific measurements, the Overton window has exactly a surface area of 3 centimeters squared. Now remember, the Overton window moving like this would be impossible, because then the surface area would be greater than 3 centimeters squared, because it's made of glass. You can't stretch glass. I have come to the conclusion that this is the only way the Overton window could have possibly shifted. That's right. You can't stretch glass.
This dude's fucking nuts.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Enjoy the ride. He's post meta,
I like him.
Meta post ironic. Yeah,
his humor is a little weird. His humor,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
No,
like, it's.
Have you guys ever seen Internet Etiquette with Eric?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that
I enjoy it.
It's not there, but this is like your gateway drug to Eric.
Yeah, I like Internet Etiquette with Eric because it's like, he has a little bit of a slant, but like, I mean, he just makes crazy mess for everybody. He like makes ridiculous YouTube comments for people, and it's well done. You can't. It's master level trolling in a way that's. Yeah, exactly. We'll have to pull it up here in a little bit.
All right.
So the window.
You can break it.
Oh yeah, that's it. Go.
Okay.
It all makes sense now, doesn't it? Being in the dead center of the political spectrum is no longer within the Overton window. As the Overton window has become more accommodating to leftist ideologies and right-wing ideologies, it has become less accommodating towards centrist ideologies. Right-wingers have overt nationalism and dragged it into the Overton window, just as socialists have grabbed socialism and dragged it into the Overton window. Together, they have truly owned the libs. My theory is thus. Liberalism is failing. Extremist ideologies proliferate in online space. Narratives and counter-narratives that before have never had the chance to see the light of day now have the opportunity to jump from brain meat to brain meat. Even liberals are sort of gathering that they can no longer take for granted the fact that they have a liberal society anymore. Now, if people value liberalism, like actual liberalism, they now have to like represent their ideals and fight for it and justify why they should have a liberal society. Now, some of you are already saying, oh, what's your source for any of this? It sounds like you're just making shit up. Okay, first of all, fuck you. Read a book. And by that, I mean watch a YouTube video. And by that, I mean watch this YouTube video. That's right, I'm my own source. What are you gonna do about it, huh? Leave a comment? Boost my algorithm rating? Rest in piss, truth, fellas. As much as I would like to take credit for this, it was all of us working together that threw the brick through the Overton window, shattering it into two halves that will never be bridged. I dream of a glorious future in which the Overton window cracks entirely. There is no range of acceptable discourse. Nothing is acceptable discourse. And yet, at the same time, everything is acceptable discourse. Everything will be permitted as different political ideologies try to replicate themselves. People think they have ideologies. The ideologies have people, and they will use these people to proliferate themselves. A great war of ideas looming. A battle royale of every feasible framework on the planet vying for domination. And whichever one wins, the status quo will lose.
Pierce the fruit.
To be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand Dreg. The humor is extremely subtle,
this isn't
and without
over.
a solid grasp of
What's the rest
science,
of this?
Sociology, and psychology,
it's
most
just
even folks will go right over.
Yeah, it's patron stuff, and
yeah.
If I had
but
to
he's
guess.
explaining, how high quality of a researcher he is. I mean, that thing is ridiculous, but I don't know. It's one of those things. It's like, they say truth is hidden in humor. Is one of the best communicators of truth. I don't know. I do think that pretty much anybody who tries to make like a more centrist middle ground suggestion is like, like pick a side, like choose something, do something. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't move anywhere.
That dude's got body armor. He's got a lot of body armor.
Oh yeah, dude, you're up for a rabbit hole. If you wanna like follow down the literally go down the tier list of mental illnesses or
oh my,
it's there. It's legitimately videos about mental illness tier list and political compass raps, and it's it's something It's something to be seen. It's one of those things that, like, you want to send it to people because it's like, wow, this is interesting, but it's like, wait, there's a possibility they're not going to understand we're being ironic here.
Yeah, yeah. You gotta be careful.
I don't know if this was his point or not, because it was hard to see through the humor. But I think his point was like, we got people, and we used to have them in this comfortable area right here. And then as of recently, it's gotten to people are heading outside that comfortable area. And the people in the middle, there's no people in the middle anymore. They're meandering out a little bit. Then the people who are on the outside, they're meandering out. That's kind of happening.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the case or not. Maybe. I think definitely the people on the outside who are, just barely in that safe zone, they're meandering out. I think that's the people. I don't know if there's no longer people in the middle though. Maybe not.
Maybe apolitical people who
I would call them the ambivalent. The uncritical.
It feels like 10 years ago, or not 10, like 20 years ago, like it was that case. Like you don't get associated with far right extremists. You don't get associated with far left extremists. But now that circulates more headlines, and like the discussion about those ends, I think, drive more algorithm. And so I think that's why honestly, I just think it's not profitable to be nuanced. Hey, we lost that person in the crowd. Oh man.
What if we're trying to use the Overton window to look at the wrong thing?
Say something else. Yes.
Yeah, right. So the reason he did that break and there's not people in the center is because that's not what the Overton window is about anymore. It should be about, well, I'm not going to say should, but what we might need to be looking at is what's the Overton window of our social dynamics? Like, what has become acceptable in terms of how we're interacting with each other? Like, and is that like a range that is shifting, or like, and what size of the range of that spectrum are we on that can better explain the breaking of the glass, the stretching of the glass?
Right. I mean, now where you got internet pockets, I mean, it's so much easier for someone to be more comfortable in an extremist.
That's right.
It's setting, like, to identify in that way, or to explore, to get personalized, to get that kind of content, to get that kind of framing put to them. And so it's like less surprising to run into people who feel that way, I think, because we have more space for them that we didn't have in the past. Like, you'd have to go to like some kind of bookstore or gun range, or I don't know, like church. I mean, there's all sorts of. You'd have to have some kind of social gathering to do it. But now you could have a grandma and some 15-year-old in India, banding together on that same ideal.
Yeah,
that they never would have connected in the past.
That's true.
I'm trying to figure out what the linear spectrum, what the axes would be to have like a window to look at this thing. And I want to say it's like individualism, like radical individualism on the left, and I'm trying to think of a complete altruism, but that's not right. Like
radical individualism on the left. What do you mean?
Yeah, it's something like identifying with a community or a greater population. I get what you're saying, that people are able to do that in the online space. But my thought is that that's an individual pursuit less than trying to think about like the humanity as a whole, or thinking about your neighbor, if you kind of follow, like thinking about people outside of that group.
Mind to give me an example.
Does that make sense? So yeah. Well, I mean, let's just use our modern politics, right? So if our Overton window is about self-interest, primarily has shifted to self-interest groups, then that can explain the high polemicized environment. So like the people who want to take away all forms of reproductive care, or like IVF, abortion, and things like that, they're only trying to maintain their group's values, supposed values, without nuance on like how they look at humans, how they look at the human body. And they're not really thinking about it from the other side's perspective. I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of them might not. Or something like immigration, right? It's either we have to strap this country down and not let anyone in without like extreme measures, or we, try for charity and accepting, asylum seekers, and we're not as stringent with every single person, right?
Hey, it sounds to me like I mean, the Overton window might be like the acceptable. You're describing two ends on both sides. Like you're describing it. Far left, far right. I mean, it sounds like you're agreeing with the video we just watched.
I am to an extent, but I think though I'm trying to help differentiate what I'm saying between. I feel like people are more putting their identity and sense of self on top of those ideas, rather than thinking about. It's hard to put it to words. Maybe someone in the audience understands what I'm trying to say. Rather than trying to like, rather than valuing like diversity and challenging of their ideas, or plurality of perspective. There it is. Maybe that's it. It's more acceptable to hold firmly to your perspective and identity, and to have a plurality.
So you're saying that we seek validation rather than try to seek out critical inquiry?
Probably. Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with it. I'm not sure if that's exactly what I'm trying to get at, but
okay.
So like someone on the opposite end of the spectrum, like someone who was talking about they were just complete opposite. I think you said like taking away reproductive rights or in vitro fertilization. If they were for those things, absolutely for those things, are they not also staying firm in their values? Like, I mean, are they not also taking one stance and not entertaining a plurality of perspectives, or whatever you were saying there? Like, how is it that they're standing strong on their view, but it's okay, but the other person's standing strong on the opposite is not? I mean, what's
I didn't say it was okay. I just said that's how it is, or it probably is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an example where it's more about the self-identification. I get like the validation by the group through the idea, rather than the idea and it challenging you and trying to figure out how to compromise.
It's a can of worms.
At least that's how I see it portrayed in, my media bubble. It's like there's no really both sides are like, we have to win, and we're going to come out on our side, and it's going to be this black and white way, rather than an agreement to say, okay, I understand a lot of Americans want this. It's hotly debated. Why don't we, go through an extensive inquiry and figure out, okay, what it really is healthcare for this situation or that situation? It's nope. It's got to be this way or it's got to be that way. And when we win, it's going to be that way.
Do you... I mean, I think there's so much to be said about attention being the currency in the marketplace of ideas. I mean, I saw some Canadian guy, I think he's like a conservative guy. He did a nice PR thing. They asked him questions. He just said yes. And then they asked another question, no. And then the other person said yes. And everybody's like losing their minds because nobody has seen a politician just actually answer a question with yes or no. And I think there is so much there's so much staying power in just being rememberable, being someone like having things that stick in people's mind that I think you're right. People do vote by identity. They vote by having
That's right.
a sense of these people have my values, and I mean, because it's hard. I mean, there's 8 million different issues, and I mean, we're not a true democracy. We're a nice republic here in America. We represent officials to do the thinking for us. And yeah, that's...
Well, and the other part of it is that in my opinion, there's a lot of otherization in the discourse, right? And I've been personally enjoying Kamala Harris saying, I'm for all Americans. I wouldn't call them all stupid. Right? When I listen to a radio station, there's a radio station that has like I'm going to say a right leaning, and the commercial break has their soundbite, and it has since 2016. We have to win the culture war. We have to defeat, our opposition, the left in this country. Which left what? Like, who? Your audience is probably so diverse. Sure, leaning, but what's going to be left to your whole audience? I mean, that's going to look completely different. Some on a much more radical side, and some maybe who were apologetic or sympathetic. But now, it's normalized to say, nope, the other side of my community, my group identity, affiliation, they're scary, and I'm fighting them. And I just really despise that language. But
yeah, it's so easy for people to put other groups and people into like another category, like an enemy category. And then yeah, and then it's just kind of all over from there on out. I was talking to a friend of mine a couple days ago, and she has this job where she does political surveys. She has to call people and be that annoying person. And she was saying that when I asked her specifically, like in blue states or in red states, like when there's like an overwhelming majority and they're the minority, like does it seem like they have a greater understanding? Do they seem to treat the opposing party, people of that party, not necessarily the candidates, but like they seem to have some sort of greater understanding. And she seemed to indicate yes, that they seem more polite, more understanding, more polite. And the people who were people who were in red states who were red, who were voting Republican, they seemed, or the same thing for blue people in blue states. They were like overwhelmingly less understanding and more hostile. So I think the more exposure you are to that other group, I think the more understanding that you can have.
Yeah. And I think a great question that we should, and I'm going to say should, ask ourselves is how much am I charitably engaged with the other side rather than coming over to preach? Like, especially on YouTube, right? It's one thing if I go over to a Christian channel and I just like say, you know, you're dumb, you need to change your mind, blah, 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 blah. Like, that's not going to work. It's like, okay, what if I just sit and listen to their argument? And I wish people would do that more. I try to do that. And then I'll push back in the comments. And I hope they're, you know, reading and thinking about it. But I try to even preface it with like, I know that text comments can seem rough. I'm not trying to, you know, hurt you or whatever. But
I mean, if you think about it though, I mean, a lot of the conservative values are based on things not changing. I mean, that's the conservatives to conserve the old values in that regard. And so it's much easier to make like a group, like an us for them in that regard. And so anything that is offering change is a them. I mean, it's very easy for that to be part of the whole setup on that. I mean, in fact, the left has a hard time with unity because a lot of what they have is can be contradicting at times because there's what they value the freedom for people to have different values, in some ways, in some of them don't. It's harder to unify that because they have less, that they're so open to change in that regard. So like it's understandable to me when I see conservatives like having this mentality like the left or whatever is their potential enemy because it offers change. It offers adjustment to the status quo. It offers potential uncertainty that they against things that potentially could have been, good for them, or maybe they're being told that this is good and people are just trying to change it because they want to do something selfishly they want to take or something like that. And so, the whole narrative is like the Democrats are just in it for themselves. Like they
that's the narrative on both sides, is it not?
It is the narrative on both sides. That's what I see. Like I to me, it's the left and the right wing are the different sides of the same bird. But don't get me started on that because I don't have a great flag I can plant and say like this is my affiliation, and that's frustrating. So, but yeah, so like I was saying, I can understand why the othering happens, and like of course the conservatives largely are a more unified group, so they become the other of the people who are wanting change. So this isn't like just there's a certain amount of boogeyman, there's a certain amount of like embellishment and scapegoating, but to a certain extent there is groups that are trying to they have conflicting ideas. They're trying to bide for power. I don't know though.
Can't we all just get along?
No.
No, I mean, definitely not.
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever.
Like,
yeah, that's ever happened in humanity. Have we all just gotten along at any point? No.
Absolutely not.
What about the first humans? You know, they must have been somewhat cooperative. You know, they had to make offspring, right?
Depends who you ask. Who those were? What those were.
Yeah. When do you make that? When does
Homo sapien really start?
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Erica Gutsip Gibbon literally says species are made up. They're just conventional labels for mating points and things like that.
They're a gradient, yeah.
Yeah. So what's the first human? Depends who you ask.
I'm the first human. Just in case you wanted to know.
Yes. I'm glad I met you.
Yeah, thanks. Great. Yeah, me too.
Should we move on to another video?
Yeah. You want to take a pic there? A lot of them are a little more long, but we can hit some chunks.
Let's see.
There's a video back when I liked Jordan Peterson before he became like a paranoid.
I think I found a good
culture war guy. Let's hear
this one.
Oh, geez, yeah.
I was reading the Bible last night.
That's great.
I read some interesting passages.
Oh, let me guess. You're going to read something that sounds unkind or violent.
Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. Do not be terrified, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me.
So when I picked this video, the title is just context with a bunch of exclamation points. I had no idea that was coming.
Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. Every word of God is flawless. He is a shield to those who take refuge in him.
Now you're in my alley.
For love
Let's
comes
go.
from God. A priest's daughter who loses her honor by committing fornication and thereby dishonors her father also shall be burned to death.
Out of context! That's not what
You're
it
leaving
means.
out the important parts
Come on,
of
you
that.
twisted the
Cherry-picked
meaning
the
of that.
Bible.
Anyone who blasphemes the name of the Lord must be put to death. The entire assembly must stone him.
What about the historical
You're leaving out the
context?
important parts of
Why
that.
do you have to
That's
take
for a
one
different
verse on
time
its
and
own?
a different culture.
I will release wild animals that will kill your children and destroy your cattle.
Hold on. I know what you're trying to do, but that's not actually God speaking there. Look, the Bible was written by fallible human beings.
Hold on. No. It's Yahweh. From verse 13 of that chapter, it's Yahweh speaking in the first person.
Oh, yeah? Well, you must have taken it out of context.
Come on, look at the surrounding
You're just
story.
picking and choosing
Within
to
the
suit
culture
your own
that it was
agenda.
written in.
God is love. Right, so you're not concerned about knowing the context of that?
No, that's
passage. The Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. He cares for those who trust in him. And Joshua took all of the cities thereof, and they smote them with the edge of the sword, and utterly destroyed all the souls that were therein. He left none remaining.
Look, you don't know the correct context of that.
Oh, the context. Well, Joshua had been Moses' apprentice and in fact commanded the first battle after the Exodus against the Amalekites in Rephidim. Having successfully spied upon Canaan, he was rewarded by God for his faith, and was given divine assistance in slaughtering city after city in a lengthy invasion of the region known as the Promised Land.
No, look.
Okay, David, does this get better? Have you seen this?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the same thing, like the entire time.
Over and over and over.
Yeah, it's just the context thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, I'd forgotten about that video. But yeah,
I don't have it. Yeah. I think 3 minutes of that was good enough for me.
Yeah, I think you got the point. That should have been like a reel, like a TikTok or a reel. Just do that, 15 seconds, talked about, and then you got the discussion. That's a lot.
I'm gonna steel man my former self if I can.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I'm actually fairly certain I came across that channel a few years ago before I would say I no longer identify as a Christian. And I think what would frustrate me about it is that it's not so simple of a retort to dismiss context. From my former perspective, the context is the nuance, and it's a bit it's hyperbolic for the video to go back and forth like that. This would have been my prior opinion. Now I'm a little bit more flexible on that. But part of, for some of those verses, part of it is hearing the other person out and understanding like the historical take on that, why that text might be there, what the broader purpose of the book might be. Not that it really justifies a lot of it, but yeah, that's how I would have kind of worked with it. Yeah,
is more of how people kind of they don't want to have to provide the context on things that are easy and that sound good and stuff like
sure.
that. And, yeah. Like, and I get it, and I spent a lot of my life in that way. Like,
well, it's like Pine Creek's "Poof or Drown," right? Do you know what that is?
I do. Yeah, Pierce, have you heard that one?
Probably. It sounds familiar, but I couldn't recite it. I couldn't. I'm sure it's a thought experiment, right?
Do we want a quick recitation?
It's basically he goes around asking people that if you were approached by Yahweh back in the Old Testament and he asked you and said, okay, everybody has been sinful and there's only one just person and like his family I'm going to save. Now, should I poof the men, women, children, and infants and babies away, or should I drown them? And then it's like the object is to make you think, well, I mean, do you say poofing would be better because it'd be less suffering, or do you say drowning would be better because that's just what God willed and so it must be the best? It's an interesting discussion that people have.
Gotcha.
You actually should
you
should decontextualize it a bit more than that, though. You don't say it's God in the Old Testament. You just say God has taken you up and said, here's what I want to do with humans. Here's option A, option B. And then the end of it is you ask, which did God choose? And it should bring to memory for them the flood account, or at least that's how I do it.
Yeah.
So
typically I've only seen it talking to after a person
together.
who's been talking about how they've been a Christian for a long time, or like, and they're trying to do like apologetics, and then that question is asked. Typically how I've seen it, but that's neat to do the old outsider test there.
Can we bring an alien into the mix with that?
Oh,
an alien who's never had any experience.
Change it to an alien?
I don't know.
As the decider or the decision provider? Like they say, like, I could do this to the human race or that.
Sure. I don't know.
If you haven't seen Pierce's channel
not
before,
too bad of an idea.
Yeah, it's just basically another god in that regard.
Right.
But if you haven't seen Pierce's channel before, he will ask people like, let's say a Hindu and a Muslim are talking to him, and they're both making kind of similar methodologies to reach their conclusions on a few things. And he'd say, what if an alien came down and he was trying to learn about Earth, and they heard these two people getting the same conclusion different conclusions using the same method? How could he tell the difference? So it's pretty fun listening to do that.
Yeah, it's kind of like your whole thing where it's the
born yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically the same thing.
Yep. I like back when I was really framing a lot of my identity of YouTube content around street epistemology. I was going to say I was going to call it proxy street epistemology, but no, I'm about burnout on labels. I just want to exist.
Do we got anything else here?
Anything with Daniel Schmackenberger, any of those videos are fantastically interesting. Like that is, he's one of these people that I'm afraid that I like most everything he says, and that scares me because I usually start criticizing somebody at some point. I mean, he might be like a little too what's the word? He could come off as pretentious to people. I think it's like that blue one, the War on Logic, or Daniel Schmackenberger, reality.
Oh, right there.
Himself.
Okay.
Yeah. But they're long videos.
An hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah. I mean,
let's go with the toolbox fallacy.
Yeah, it's a good short one. That's nice and lighthearted too.
I have lost count of the number of times I've come to understand something about myself through a piece of entertainment. Collateral is a surprisingly thoughtful and intimate action movie about a hitman, played by Tom Cruise, being driven from job to job in a single evening by a captive cab driver, played by Jamie Foxx. Before they meet, we see that Fox is clearly in the stream of life. His preparation for the day is methodical, familiar, and perpetual. When the job gets difficult, he folds down his visor to look at a postcard of an island paradise. Between rides, he fawns over a catalog and dreams of starting his own limo business. Limos, he tells everyone, are what he's really up to. The cab thing is just until he gets the money together.
How long you been driving? 12 years.
As the movie reaches its climax and the two men strike at each other's character, Tom Cruise hits Fox with a hard truth.
Paper towels, clean cab, limo company someday. How much you got saved? Someday my dream will come. Didn't happen. It never will, because you were never going to do it anyway. All it ever took was a down payment on a Lincoln Town car. That girl, you can't even call that girl. What the fuck are you still doing driving a cab?
After college, when people asked me what I did, I would tell them I'm a video creator, a storyteller. But right now, I'm working this job. Until she graduates. Until we get the money together to move to California. Until I can buy a camera. Until I can get a good editing suite. Until I live in a place with collaborators. I remember the moment when this illusion I'd been using to fend off reality finally collapsed. I was working in telephone tech support, the most soul-sucking job I've ever had. I'd just been called a worthless idiot because I couldn't get a disembodied voice into his meeting. I put my head down, and it occurred to me I hadn't made a video in 6 years. And the only story I'd told in all that time was this lie I'd kept repeating to myself. And I thought, maybe this is all I really am, the person I became while I was waiting to start my life. A creation is a marker dropped in the stream of time, and the longer we go without dropping the next, the less meaningful that marker becomes. As the unyielding grip of each passing day dragged me farther from the things I'd made in college, eventually became was. A writer writes, a painter paints. And at that moment, with my head down, I understood for the first time that I was no longer a video creator. I had put off making anything new for long enough, using the same fallacy over and over and over again. I can't do X until I have Y. Once I have the gym membership, tablet, camera, laptop, time, then I'll be able to work out, paint more, work on photography, write, be happy. That is the toolbox fallacy. And it has been one of the most persistent, tick-like, ever-present lies to myself I've ever distinguished, infesting a wide variety of aspirations: health, love, creativity. And the toolbox fallacy often hides in plain sight because, as with any good self-deception, it only works because there are certain circumstances when it's actually true. It wouldn't be so damn sticky if it were never valid. Now here are some helpful examples. I can't fly without a plane, that's true. I can't cook without a heat source, that's also true. I can't drive without a license, that's not true, but it is good advice. Worse, often I found once I had the tool I was coveting, things still didn't change. The new camera languished on the shelf. The computer became an instrument for gaming only. The Fitbit became a measure of all the steps I wasn't taking during the day. The hard truth is that the lack of these things wasn't actually what was wrong. Having a hammer is not what makes you a carpenter. Using a hammer is what does, and a writer writes, be it with laptop, pen, crayon, or haiku carved in the sand with a branch. My dad played the piano his whole life. When the family would take vacations and there wasn't an instrument in sight, I would sometimes catch him pounding a concerto out onto the tabletop, the notes echoing in his mind. See, the fallacy's reason for being is to distract from the real problem, which is in all cases some manifestation of failure fear. When you realize you haven't been to the gym in a month and just ordered takeout for the 3rd day in a row. When your characters have jumped the shark and you don't know how to write them back to where they should be. When you can't stand the video you just made, feel like an utter and complete fraud, and don't want to publish. When they leave. When they stop texting you back. As kids, we were fearless. We drew horses in our notebooks that looked to adults like fornicating haunted trees, all bent over and stuck together. We told stories that lacked an adequate climax, barely met the requirements to be classified as English, and our protagonist's motivation was completely hazy, but who cares? Because do you realize that story had a giant laser in it? That thing was huge! We didn't care. Expression was bursting from our hearts and fingertips. And then somewhere on the road to adulthood, we were taught to demonize our mistakes. Maybe we never really change. The real value of an education is self-awareness. The ability to see our already always automatic ways of living our lives. Being the grump in traffic. The why me at the DMV. And for me, the toolbox fallacy. Self-awareness doesn't make those corrupted perspectives of ours go away, but it does give you the freedom to choose another way of being. And with every step in a different direction, you feel the gravity of those automatic ways of being less and less. This is the first video I made 7 years after college. I recorded it using my computer's built-in microphone and edited it using software that came pre-installed. Most of the clips are not mine, but the composition is. A writer writes. This is still one of the videos I am most proud of. I am a high-functioning neurotic. Much of my life has been dedicated to learning how to manage my own fear of failing, and I have only ever found 2 things that work for me. The first is to expect failure's inevitable visitation from time to time, as opposed to fearing it. The second is to remind myself as necessary that a lifetime spent failing would still be a life better lived than the one in which I never got started.
Takeaway is have the right tools. You can't do shit without the right tools. Tools are not good enough because you need motivation or you need desire. And if you're afraid of failing, then you're never going to do it. But fuck failing and just do it. That's my takeaway. Was that the message?
I mean, it's definitely something we can experience a lot. I feel the same way about my YouTube channel sometimes. Where it's like, oh, if I do this or if I have more time, that, you know, maybe I'll make this a quote success. Like, what the hell is success even to me anyway? Also, with the kid thing, the freedom to express ourselves and not worry about mistakes and how we lose that in adulthood. I think my favorite thing that I try to do at my job, or just when things go like quote unquote wrong in public with me or my kids, like I like almost run into somebody, or or I drop stuff at the grocery store, I don't like freak out, or I literally forgot my money. I've done that before. There's a song from Doc McStuffins. It's called "Whoopsie, I Made a Mistake, but It's Okay," and it's trying to teach you that, like, even though you're not very good at something, or things go wrong, you're just like, okay, but there's still more life to live. You can always try again. Like, for most things that are kind of harmless. Obviously, there's some mistakes that you can't go back from, but for a day-to-day like proverb, whoops, I made a mistake, but it's okay.
India, I feel like you should be the one who's making videos like the one we just watched.
Damn it.
Like that was not a half bad like start to a script right there. That wasn't bad.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Very good. What else we got on this list?
I'm chewing on so many like video ideas that I've got like a folder on my phone of screenshots of things like, oh, I want to come back and talk about this. I want to make a video about these kind of topics. Oh, I've got a note that I could scroll through. I've got a script for a video. Like, I'm going to make a channel introduction. And no, I'm just using my lizard brain. And it's been nice. Pierce has been a champion of production here, and he's helped me have a weekly call-in show. But
it's a bit scuffed, but
yeah, I mean, it's all right. But I have I've leaned into my lizard brain, and I have not created anything on purpose or like without being reactive, because I think one of my biggest skill sets is being reactive more than proactive or using that executive function stuff. I think they have a name for it, something like dumb. No, but I don't know. I do every like I watch that video like once a year or something like that, and it hits me hard. I'm chewing on it now. Comment something that you keep thinking that you're not ready to start, but you really just need to start it.
Just do it.
That meme, oh my god. I mean, I actually have a conversation that I need to finish syncing up between the two microphones I use to record it, and just keep putting it off for some reason. I don't even know. So I can add it to my little goofy series, but I mean, that's one thing off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Very relevant.
I've heard things like, if you don't make time for it, it doesn't happen, kind of thing. And it's like I have time tonight. Like, I could end this show right now and do productive things. I could
You mean I could get off stage and edit that?
You could be doing it right now. You could do it while you're on stage. What's stopping you? The world's your oyster.
Oh no, I can't. I'd have to listen to you, listen to the video, and listen to that. If I had separate sets of my brain with multiple ears, more ears, then maybe.
You have 2 ears. You're right.
Well, is that the toolbox fallacy? I need an extra ear and brain region.
You're gonna be waiting a long time for an extra ear. I mean, we're getting close, but I mean, it's still going to be a while, and it's going to cost a lot of money. And then you're going to think, I need to get the money to get an extra ear so I can edit and be on stage and talk at the same time. You just got to do it.
Just do it.
But yeah. So
I've been caught with my ear pants down before on stream, where I was half listening, and then they ask me something, I'm like, oh shit.
Oh yeah.
Sorry for the swears.
Ear pants.
There are maybe 2 videos potentials on this list here. I think either watch this long one and finish up, or watch this short one and then think about watching another one afterwards. The You Probably Don't Exist is fun. It's the same person who did that first video we watched.
Oh, I like
it's one of my
guy.
favorites by them. Yeah, Exturbia is a fantastic channel if you want to have some great existential crises, but they're fun. He has a way of painting how grim and or how deep and vast the well of existence is, and then being reminded oh yeah, but I mean that's why not have it.
It's called Exturbia.
Yeah. Yep, with a 1 for the I. Highly recommend.
Okay, I found it. They have a ton of subscribers. Okay.
All right, we're going in on this one.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Where'd you come up with that title, genius? On the fucking toilet? Well, yes, actually. And that's because today we're mainly going to be talking about consciousness and... Jesus, what the fuck? Fear. Fear is an automatic response in your brain to perceived scary shit. But fear itself is not under your conscious control. It is automatic. And if it's automatic, then that is not you. It is a thing your brain does, but it is not a thing that you do, conscious you. So presumably, there's stuff in your brain you don't control, and then there's stuff in your brain that you do control. Stuff that is you. Let's find out where the line is then, shall we? Well, for most of the day so far, you've been blinking and breathing automatically. Congratulations, keep it up, but now you're thinking about it, so you're doing it manually. Anyway, you'll forget about it in a few minutes, and all of that will become automatic again. So that is not you. Okay, what next? Well, what about the things you like? Surely we choose those. Let's say your music taste, for example. Good music activates the part of the brain dealing with euphoric reward response, or the bit that makes you feel nice. Okay, fine, but did you choose to prefer Metallica over Beethoven, or over the blood-curdling sound of 2 cats banging outside? No, obviously not, otherwise you just choose to prefer everything. Even though you can choose what to listen to, the preference itself, what presses your musical, or foodish, or social buttons, is out of your control. So that is also not you. Okay, so we'll push the line over a bit more. You don't control what scares you, you don't control basic survival stuff, you don't control what you enjoy. So okay, but at least you can choose what your brain is processing, right? Where to put your mind. Yeah, well, not always. If you're a native English speaker or just fluent in English, you're not choosing to understand these words, are you? They're just coming in and your brain is doing the work for you. Like, try to hear these syllables without the meaning. An adequate kitchen. A stationary football. 2 cats reenacting a scene from the motion picture Titanic, having provided a rubber ring for the mice. An anthropomorphized dog off for his final exam before qualifying as a lumberjack. A man successfully combining his responsibilities as an accountant with his love of nautical tourism. A man with a hitherto unexplained eye condition attempting to play a piece of music on the abacus while not gripping the abacus correctly. And a doctor who is about to destroy a burger as well as the majority of his left hand with the help of, if I am not mistaken, a silenced Walther PPK. It's impossible because language processing, when you're good enough, is automatic. So that is not you. Okay, Jesus, but what about high-level stuff? What about playing instruments or driving a car? That must take awareness. That can't be automatic. Yeah, okay, probably, for the first while. But if you play an instrument, you may have noticed your fingers just know what they're doing, automatically. Or if you drive, you know it's possible to get from A to B in a car and spend the entire time having an argument in your head with your dad because he still hasn't bought you that fucking Etch-a-Sketch, while never actually thinking about changing gear or pushing the pedals. So high-level motor coordination, when you practice it, can be completely automatic too. Yeah, okay, but at least simple motor tasks are in your control. Moving a hand or a leg or whatever. Yeah, or not. Very simply, Benjamin Libet did a fairly famous experiment with getting people to press a button randomly when they felt like it. He was monitoring their brain activity while they did this. The weird thing is that the brain seemed to be preparing to push the button a disturbing length of time before people were reporting choosing to press the button itself. There are problems with this experiment for sure, but it does seem a bit like the systems underneath you, underneath being conscious, might be way more essential than the conscious systems themselves, and that choosing to do stuff is maybe just a game the brain plays afterwards to justify what it was already going to do anyway. Maybe. Okay, so fear isn't you, survival stuff isn't you, preference isn't you, lots of motor control isn't you. Christ, what else is going on in there that isn't you? Well, a fair bit actually, like, oh, you know, balancing when you walk, or falling asleep and waking up, or remembering who you are, or where you are, or when you are, or fetching memories in the first place, or taking all of the perceptions that are coming in through your senses and turning them into a coherent picture of the world that actually makes fucking sense, or even just processing everything at the same time, or processing text, or perceiving color, or just pretty much anything. Most of it is automatic, or at least not mediated by you consciously. Is there anything in your brain that you do control then, you silly, clever mess? Yeah, let's start by you closing your eyes. Go on. Are they closed? They bloody better be. Nothing nasty is going to come up on the screen or anything. All right?
Close your eyes, Pierce.
Cool. If you listen to my voice for a moment and just try to ignore how grating and pretentious it is, if you put everything else out of your mind, all the anxieties and the neuroses, all the sensations of your body, you will find that underneath all of that is nothing but awareness. There's no obvious you on the inside. There's no tiny cat pulling levers and pressing buttons. There's no center to being conscious. It's just presence. It's just awareness. There are sensations and awareness of sensations, and then processes, probably most of them automatic. You, as a thing, don't seem to have a center if you look for one. You, conscious you, do not really exist, not concretely, to be very simple about it. That is the idea, anyway. Go on then, open your eyes, you scallywag. Another automatic process in the brain might be the system that says, I am a thing with a centered self. There is something on the inside doing the experiencing, and it is me. But maybe there isn't. Maybe there just fucking isn't. And what then? Well, insulting sign-off followed by jaunty classical music. Dovijdene. Hang on a second. Look, even if you are kind of a lie, which you might be, me too, you are still self-aware, whatever happens. And that is pretty unique. We don't know how self-aware other animals are. Almost no animals recognize their reflection for some reason, except maybe some of the great apes, possibly dolphins, elephants, and magpies for some reason. But a bigger question is, if there are other species in the universe, and there probably are, and if they've been around a while, and they probably have, are they self-aware? We always seem to make out that advanced aliens will have gone down similar lines to us, starting as cells, going up and up, building fast food joints, smoking doobies, etc. But would they be self-aware necessarily? Like, maybe evolution accidentally made some higher mammals on Earth self-aware because it's better for problem solving or something in this one case. Maybe it was just one of those weird drunken experiments nature undertakes sometimes, like platypuses or Winchester. Maybe we just got really lucky. This might be a one-time trick in the universe, and we got to take it for a test drive. And that really gets one thinking, because what we need is a global holiday, and we'll call it Being Alive is Fucking Cool Day, where everyone gets the day off, and just for a bit, even for a few hours, takes the time to remember that everyone you meet, however shit, is kind of a miracle in plain sight. And on Global Being Alive is Fucking Cool Day, we'll all eat donuts and take leisurely strolls in the park and be cool to everyone, and around 3 o'clock, solemnly put our hands on our hearts and pledge the following: that as the sperm that won the race, as the mud that woke up, as a blob of carbon currently taking the shape of a human, I do declare that the world cool, and being self-aware is fucking cool. And I shall henceforth hold doors open for people and fill pints right up to the top with only minimal foam, and endeavour not to be a knob unless it's absolutely necessary. And I do hereby furthermore declare that getting bored in a universe this weird is unacceptable, and if that happens, I should probably take up the tuba or organise a water fight. We shall have bad days, yes? We shall have good days, yes? All the while remembering that most things in the universe don't even have fucking days at all. Even if it's all a facade, there is something on the inside that knows it's a thing. And that is the cat's pajamas. That is the veritable lobster's bottom. Oh, and there'll be hats, and free beer, and bouncy castles. And I will see you there, carbon units. Russivapur, Biob, no gutter for all.
Wow.
I had a few moments of euphoria there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like a crescendo of a song, or yeah. That kind of leads me into my do we have free will, not free will, the illusion of free will.
Oh, geez.
Questions. Good times. Good times. I love it. It's an existential crisis, but fun.
Yeah, I mean, I like the music example because it's a very testable example. Like if you just you just flip your way through the radio, right? how much control do you really think you have over which sequences of sound you like versus what someone else likes, right?
Yeah, I would love to like everything.
It has to
That'd be
do.
great.
I don't know if I would love to like. I don't know. You need to
would,
convince me
because
that I would love to like everything. Yeah, I guess.
Imagine the music library that you could have. Like, you just turn something on and you like it. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Like,
you know,
to
going
what
shopping.
extent could you turn that off? Like, I mean, if you hear birds chirping, are you just like, oh yeah, it's my jam?
I don't think I get to choose how much I loathe my daughter chewing with her mouth open.
But what if you did love it?
You know, I would complain less.
Like, what if it gave you the same feeling as her giggling? It's the same noise. It's a noise coming out of their mouth.
Yeah,
I think you just hit him in the noggin.
Caught you with your ear pants down, or whatever you said earlier.
What a valuable expression.
I think you caught him with his brain pants down.
Yeah, yeah. So everybody who's watching this show on Discord, everybody's watching the show on Pierce's channel, on my channel, streaming on both for fun times. Come in and comment videos or names of videos and stuff that maybe we could watch in the future, because it's pretty fun. I like to do this again sometime. We typically do a live call-in show where we have people call in. We do topics ranging from personal beliefs, religious beliefs, political beliefs, and our goal is to walk through the process of the thought process, is what we call it. The thought process of how they came to their conclusion, not necessarily like arguing this conclusion is right, this conclusion is wrong, but the goal is, at the end of the day, the person speaking understands their position better, the person listening understands how they came to that conclusion, and the person who is speaking also might understand why the other person might think differently. That's the goal. It doesn't mean that people have to agree with the other side, but the goal is to understand a little more. And maybe we'll be less awful to each other sometimes. Maybe it would feel less othering if we saw people as understood the context of where people came from. So go on our YouTube channels, send us a message on Discord if you don't want to fool with YouTube, and give us some videos or give us some thoughts on the things that we've watched, things we've said. Listen to our other stuff. Subscribe to Pierce. Downvote all my stuff if you want. I don't care. Pierce is the man with the production plan, and
dislikes our engagement.
Dislikes our engagement. I'll take it. Like, I'll be the negative, the evil Pierce.
Yes, go sub to them. They are. This is good fun.
Thanks for coming up, Nitty.
Of course.
We might do this on Discord next time. We might do this
sure
through like StreamYard and just have like a link to call in.
It might be easier.
Yeah, a little cleaner and easier to do there. So
yeah, you guys can always message me if you want me to swing on by if I'm free.
We'll do. I like bringing.
I'm not saying I want to become a regular or something. You can just.
Oh, you're not going to be a regular. I'm just going to tell you right now. We are irregular people. Like, we are clogged up.
Okay.
Ooh, clogged up. Which end?
Yeah. Definitely the rear, because all I do is diarrhea of the mouth and constipation of the brain.
Are you talking out your ass? Because all I hear is.
Yes. Why, yes, I am.
All right. Since Nitty's up here, I think we should let him do the outro. Say something.
What?
Say something interesting, Nitty, to send us off.
Yeah.
You are always amazing, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Every day is new. You make a mistake, Whoopsies. It's okay.
Whoopsies.
Here we go.